What do we want?
Documentary.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Documentary.
When do we want it?
Now.
Welcome, strangers, to Documentary, a show where we get comfy, cozy, and crippled, watch documentaries, and then get together and talk about them.
Welcome, friends, to the 39th episode of Documentary. That's right, 39. Just like Jeff, we're almost 40. And this evening we are sitting in a Capitol building demanding equal rights for all human beings with a spectacular and special army of people who will settle for no less than fair treatment for all. Let's meet the crew for this sit-in. Across from me, we have Lady Katy. What's up, Katy?
Oh, I'm here. I'm ready. I got my cushion, and I'm ready to sit in for as long as it takes. Let's do this.
Perfect. King James himself. Hello, sir.
Hey, what's going on?
Bow at your feet.
Hey.
Over there in the booth, we got Mr. Matty Boom Blatty. We don't have a microphone that works for him. So there we go. And listeners, friends, we have a very, very special guest with us this evening. They are an award-winning disability awareness consultant who has been featured on all sorts of media outlets such as the BBC. That stands for the British Broadcasting, not what the other BBC stands for.
Wow.
CBC, Daily Extra, Gay Time UK, HuffPost, The Advocate, Everyday Feminism, Mashable, and Out.com, and a whole bunch of other cool shit. They were the subject of an award-winning documentary called Picture This, a sex-positive documentary about the uneasy dichotomy that disabled people face of feeling either invisible or like a freak show, especially with regards to their sexuality. A documentary, like I said earlier, that I would very much like to cover for our show someday and hopefully have them back to talk about it. They're the host of a kick-ass podcast called Disability After Dark, the co-founder of Bumpin', a sex toy company for the disabled, for and by disabled people. Strangers, let me introduce you to our new friend who proudly identifies as disabled, Mr. or do you prefer Mr.?
I like Mr. Mr. works.
All right, Mr. Andrew Gurza. Hello, my friend.
Everybody. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, man. I was super pumped when you agreed to join us for this episode. You have a cool story, man, and you have a really kick-ass podcast doing a lot of great work for queer and disabled community and the queer disabled community. So super stoked to have you here, man.
Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to be on the other side of the mic and just be a guest.
Yeah.
It's always way more fun. I don't have to do any work. It's great.
Yeah. You're like, I just have to watch a documentary that I've already watched 3 or 4 times and
Cool.
talk about it. That sounds pretty fun. Is that, I asked you this before we got microphones working. Is that Professor Xavier behind you?
It's actually a painting that my brother drew of me as Professor X.
That's
hell yeah.
amazing.
And who's pushing you? Is that Jean?
Like a pretend rogue person behind me.
Okay.
Who was not really there, but he had somebody stand in and pretend to be her to do the painting.
They should have done like a cross-gendered or cross-dressed rogue or something like that to push you around, don't you think?
I mean, that'd be pretty cool. But this was 10 years ago.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
maybe now we redid it. Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Still very good.
Yeah. Before we go any further, I want to make sure we get a few things out of the way real quick. Please go out, rate and review our podcast on your favorite podcast streaming services. Let us know what you think of our show. If you want to connect with our crew, look for @Documentary Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, or we love hearing from you on email, info.documentary@gmail.com. If you are just chomping at the bit to join us on this show and you have a documentary you think would be really cool for us to cover.
Who isn't? This is a great show. I love it. This is
All
great.
right.
Thank you.
All right. This week, we traveled all the way to the Catskill Mountains in New York. I feel like we've done a lot of documentaries that are out of New York, which is fine.
It's a popular place.
It's far away from us, though.
Yeah.
We joined a fascinating and inspiring group of disabled people as they let nothing stand in their way to pave a more accessible world for themselves and an entirely blah, 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 blah.
Matt, you get that?
to pave a more accessible world for themselves and an entire marginalized portion of our society. We watched a beautiful 108-minute long documentary released in 2020 called Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution. This film takes us back to the early 1970s, to the days before the Americans with Disabilities Act was put into law and long before it was enforced, and takes us to a wonderful hippie-led summer camp.
Is it enforced today? Question mark.
Question mark, question mark, question mark. Right. I do hope we get into that.
A lot of it is enforced today. A lot of it is.
We'll find out from Andrew how much he's experienced.
Well, you experience a lot by how much you can get around, how accessible you have to like a lot of government programs and things like that. So the act has been enforced, but it just has not been.
It has no teeth.
Right. Exactly.
That's a good way to put it.
In my opinion, it needs teeth.
Yep.
So this documentary takes us to a wonderful hippie-led summer camp called Camp Gen Ed, designed for teens with disabilities, and for some was their first taste of being treated like the unique, wonderful human beings they were and not just seen as a handicap. The experience at Camp Gen Ed drove these campers to grow into hard-hitting activists in the disability rights movement, and ultimately we follow their lead as they fight for accessibility legislation. Here is the trailer.
What, you want me to tell them what happened? Well, 2 people got cramps and they're spreading. We were all very hyper about it. Might have to go shower some people. I'll see you later.
I wanted to be part of the world, but I didn't see anyone like me in it. I hear about a summer camp for the handicapped run by hippies. Somebody said you probably will smoke dope with the counselors, and I'm like, sign me up.
Come to Camp Gen Ed and find yourself.
There I was in Woodstock.
You wouldn't be picked to be on the team back home, but at Gen Ed, you had to go up to bat.
Even when we were that young, we helped empower each other. It was allowing us to recognize that the status quo is not what it needed to be.
The world always wants us dead. We live with that reality.
At the time, so many kids just like me were being sent to institutions. It was just a continual struggle.
Most disabled people, like myself, are unable to use public transportation.
We needed a civil rights law of our own.
A rehabilitation program has been vetoed by the president because it was cost prohibitive.
We decided we were going to have a demonstration.
You get the call to action, to the barricades.
A small army of the handicapped have occupied this building for the past 11 days.
So many people from Camp Gen Ed found their way into the building.
The FBI cut off the phones. The deaf people went, we know what to do. That's how we communicated to the people outside the building. The Black Panther Party would bring a hot meal. We were like this.
We are the strongest political force in this country.
We will no longer allow the government to oppress disabled individuals. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
What we saw at that camp was that our lives could be better.
If you don't demand what you believe in for yourself, you're not going to get it.
You like to see handicapped people depicted as people?
Excuse me?
That has to be one of my favorite trailers that we've listened to. The music is fucking sweet.
Goosebumps, crying again.
Goosebumps all the way around. What do you guys think? I mean, this documentary, I mean, before we get too far into it, this was sweet. I mean, this was powerful. This was the start of something really cool. And I'm also very interested, since we have someone with the experience in the world of having disability, to see, like we talked about a little bit, how far have we come since here and how far do we have to go as a society. So, but James, thoughts on this documentary, man?
Well, when I first heard it, I said, oh boy, we got a group now, a camp to have Crips. What about the camp for the Bloods? You know, that's what I'm thinking, you know, until I started listening to it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool.
Yeah.
And the deeper I got into it, the more I got excited
Yep.
The more I start looking up stuff, you know, I get the deep and then trying to like, wow. I use the word wow a lot. You guys, anyway.
I was like, wow.
Wow. It was like, wow, look at this. Look at this.
Eye-opening.
And not only that, I was just telling a friend of mine about it. I said, man, look at this. I'm complaining about going to school and having troubles. Look at these people just jetting out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they don't even jet out. They go to a different place.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway, I'm gonna stop right there for everybody to have the opportunity to talk.
No, you're all right, man.
I'll get a little carried away sometimes.
King James, we're okay with that.
You're good.
So,
Katie, this was actually your choice, and we'll get into in a second why you chose this one. But did you love it as much as you thought you were going to?
Just so much more powerful than I could have even imagined. Like, there's so many statements that hang in the air after they say them. Like, I can't remember which one, who it was, but she said that was the first moment that I knew that I was disabled, because somebody said it to her face and they said, "Oh, are you sick?" Because you're still a person, but
Judy,
the
right?
outside,
Judy
the
Human,
outside world will identify you as only your disability. And that's just earth shattering. And then the other statement of they want us dead. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, well, you know, eventually we just need to stop having babies with these genetic disorders. And I was like, oh my God, do you know you're talking about eugenics?
Right.
This is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a very powerful documentary, and I'm really happy with it.
For sure. Andrew, when you and I were talking about you coming on this show, you told me you had already seen this like maybe 3 or 4 times, and you were 4 times. Yeah. And you wanted to come on and talk about it. Talk about, I mean, besides, you know, what might seem like the obvious, why does this mean so much to you?
I mean, I think the documentary is so important because, and my favorite part of the documentary has to be the first 45 minutes where they're just at camp being campers, and they're just living their lives, and they're talking about sex, and they're talking about like getting crabs, and they're talking about like, you know, being campers, and they're talking about how their families don't let them express themselves, or they don't have privacy. It's hard to let do stuff. And so the activism part is obviously really important, but I really like clung on to the first 45 minutes of where they're just together talking about their lives. Because I went to a camp very similar to Camp Jeanette for years and years when I was a kid, from about 6 to about 18. I went to a similar camp where it was a whole bunch of campers with disabilities. The staff was like 18, 19, 20. They learned how to take care of us, and they took care of us, and we bonded like that. I mean, a lot of us didn't end up being, you know, super huge activists, but it was very similar in the experience of like learning how to be just a kid and learning how to have all those experiences. And so I really connected to that part of the film.
Yeah. And while we got you talking about that, if you don't mind, and share as much as you're willing to, would you mind telling us a little bit of your story and about your disability, and just so our listeners kind of have an idea of who you are and what you're bringing to our show today?
Yeah, of course. So my name is, well, you know who I am. My name is Andrew, and I'm a disability awareness consultant, and my disability is spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy, which means for me that I can't walk, and I need help with basically everything in your day that you take for granted, from eating, dressing, using the toilet, brushing your teeth, getting a drink of water, all those things I need help with. So I am what I refer to as severely disabled, and I need a lot of help, and I need constant care. And it plays a role in my everyday life all the time. Yeah, I have to think about all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing. And once again, I'm about to get into some of the credit information, but once again, I really appreciate you being here. I'm excited to get into this and to hear into some of your perspective. So yeah, thanks, man.
No worries. I'm glad to be here.
Good. All right. So this was co-directed and co-written by Nicole Newnham. Nicole Newnham and James Lebrecht. Produced by Nicole Newnham, James Lebrecht, and Sarah Boulder, with executive producers Tanya Davis, Priya Swamin. Oh my gosh, the name butcher strikes again. You just got to put
it in Google Translate and figure it out.
Swaminathan, Howard Gertler, and a couple no-name people named Barack and Michelle Obama.
Who are they again? What did they do? What
I
did
don't
they
know.
produce? Yeah, I know.
I don't think I've ever heard of them.
No, I don't know who they are.
Thanks, Obama. This film was a Higher Grounds production, Rusted Spoke, Little Punk, Just Films, and Ford Foundation's production, distributed by and streamed on Netflix. Crip Camp scores a massively fresh 100% tomato meter on Rotten Tomatoes with 100 reviews and an audience score of 91% with over 250 ratings. A fresh review from Sophie Monks Kaufman of Sight and Sound says, quote, a vital and joyful work that puts a lesser-known part of American civil rights history on the map. Another fresh review from Dan Buffa of KSDK, I swear I can read, News in St. Louis says, quote, this documentary sneaks up on you, grabbing your interest with music and history, but keeping it with the candid footage of souls, both young and old, asking for acceptance. I would agree that these souls were demanding access as opposed to asking for acceptance, but still a very good review. And one of the only slightly negative reviews, even though it still registers as fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, was by someone named Carla Hay of Culture Mix. They said, quote, the title Crip Camp, A Disability Revolution is somewhat misleading because the movie is more about the revolution than it is about the camp. The movie itself is an inspiring but unevenly edited documentary. So I think if that's the worst that this film got, I think we're doing pretty good. Or they're doing pretty good. I had nothing to do with it. Anyway, all of that will be in the show notes. Let's get into it. A quick warning, if you want to watch this documentary before we spoil anything, go ahead. But I don't think it hurts to listen to us and then go watch it and then come listen again. So there's your spoiler alert. All right, let's get into why we watched this one. Lady Katy, you were our dealer this week.
Yes, sir.
Why did you choose this one for us?
I think for a lot of the American public, disabilities are almost invisible. If someone's not in a wheelchair or has crutches, we just don't look at it. There's a lot of people who have disability hangers in their car, but there's a lot of invisible disabilities. And like the documentary says, we treat them as second-class citizens. And I know that a lot like the civil rights movement for African Americans, people would say, well, just ask nicely. Well, you can't ask nicely. You're not going to get what you want. You're not going to get what you need. Mm-hmm. You had to stand up and you had to demand for equal rights, not separate, but equal, but just to demand to be treated like a human and have equal access. Mm-hmm. And I feel like this documentary really brought to the forefront all the things that I definitely didn't learn in school.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely not. Yeah.
No. And to give us the opportunity to watch that people with disabilities are just like us. They have the same wants and needs, and they are just as capable. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what people don't know.
Right. Cool. Well, I'm glad you chose this one.
You're welcome.
Did we have, I mean, besides James thinking that this was about, gangs, did we have any predictions about this one that maybe that were either met or that they didn't meet? James, did you have predictions about this one that you were surprised about?
Like I said, I was surprised that it went to the disabled people. Mm-hmm. I'm still thinking that somebody's going to pop up with a
red
blue
bandana.
I was going to say, is it red or blue?
Blue, yeah.
Blue. But
Bloods.
Andrew, when you first heard the name Crip Camp, without seeing it, did you think gang?
No, because I...
Okay. God damn, I thought I was going to get you on my side.
I studied disability, so I knew right away that Crip is a reclamation of the word cripple, and it's a way that a lot of activists and social people that do disability have reclaimed the negativity around that word, which is why I use the word cripple in the work that I do.
Yeah,
right.
And that
reclaim it for me.
And I'd like to hear a little bit about that. I think just because, if as someone who is, would you say able-bodied? Is that the...
Yeah. Okay. I would say able-bodied or non-disabled.
Okay. So someone who's non-disabled, I hear Crip Camp and I almost like choke on my words because I feel like it almost feels like a slur.
Yes.
Like I want to be careful, about that. So, but when I actually got onto your webpage, Andrew, and you said you identify as a Crip or crippled, and I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. So what you're saying is the disabled community has sort of reclaimed that and said, well, you can't hurt us with that one because that's our word.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not all of us have. Not every. I can't speak
Sure.
for every single disabled person in the world, unfortunately. But
Unfortunately,
I'd like to, but I can't. So not all of us have, but I have, and a lot of us have because
Mhm.
you know, I don't think it's so much when it comes to language around disability. I don't think it's even so much what's being said;
Mhm.
it's how it's being said. So when somebody makes a mistake around language, and you have to listen to how are they saying it? Are they being malicious? Are they trying to hurt you? Or are
Right.
they just learning? Or like when people say handicapped, some people would say, "Don't use that term around me." But
Mhm.
instead of screaming at them and saying, "Oh my God, you're an ableist, don't use that word,"
Sure.
you have to listen to how are they using it. Are they being mean? Or are they just trying to like
That's
Sure.
very
learn?
gracious.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Thank you for your insight there. So this film takes place in the early 1970s. Well, at least part of it does.
Part of it.
Where teenagers with disabilities faced a future shaped by isolation, discrimination, and institutionalization. Enter Camp Gen Ed, a ramshackle camp for disabled youth in the Catskills, exploded those confines. Gen Ed was their freewheeling utopia, a place with summertime sports, music, smoking, makeout sessions, and maybe even a little hanky-panky, can we say?
Having little makeout sessions. That was super
Yeah.
cute.
Regardless of their disabilities, campers experienced liberation and full inclusion as human beings. And these bonds between campers endured as many of them began realizing that disruption, political participation, and a little civil disobedience could change their future and the futures of millions of people over countless generations. So let's get into some standout moments, things that we liked or didn't like about this documentary. I thought, this documentary, it's a wonderful telling of a single moment in our history that many people have never heard before, myself included. And, I love that this could potentially open the door to tell more stories and give way to even more voices from this community. And I hope in some, small way, we can do our part to give a little bit of amplification to these voices. So this documentary focused on the creation, retention, and enforcement of laws specifically toward the accessibility, which would be the physical accessibility for disabled folks. It was a kind of a fuck how much money it costs you and how many walls and curbs you have to break down. We deserve to be able to access all the same amenities
As
that
anyone else.
anyone else, does. And we won't accept anything less. But so, Andrew, 50 years after this story that we watched, talk to me about how you feel things are going now. ADA is a thing, and businesses, private, federal, are required to make things,
State and
physically
local, yep.
accessible. And yeah, so let's start there. Talk to me about how you feel that's going now.
I mean, I think that it was an amazing start, and it was a great cornerstone to change things. And putting it into law was a huge beginning to making change. However, but just because they put it into law, it doesn't mean they change the attitudes around of the people that are enforcing the law. You can put something into law to make yourself look great on paper, but if your attitude doesn't change, then who cares?
Right.
So I think that it was a great start, but like I said earlier, has no teeth. Apparently, a lot of people go to court to litigate ADA violations, and then what happens is they pay a fine and they move on, and then there you go. So
yeah,
that doesn't really do much to change the attitude of society. And then, I mean, the ADA doesn't focus on things like marriage equality when you're disabled and if you're on benefits in the US or Canada or other places in the world, and you want to marry somebody, you can't because you'll lose your benefits. So the ADA doesn't really focus on that, and I think it needs to be broadened to look at deeper societal issues. Obviously, access is very important, but there's so much more to it than that, and I think it needs to be
extended. So to speak on the so this was, first and foremost, they were at the point in history that this documentary covered, they were focusing more on the the physical access, right? Like at that point, you couldn't even get on a train because there was no way to fit a wheelchair or a power chair or anything through that. And you had to stay on the street for blocks before you got to a spot that had a ramp to get you up. So do you feel like the world is pretty physically accessible now, or the country, I should say, is fairly physically accessible? And just without going any further than just that, is it?
Depends where you are.
Okay.
Depends.
Some places are better than others.
If you're in like LA, I would say no. If you're in New York, maybe. If you're in like, you know, a more rural part of the country, I don't know. I mean, it really depends.
Yeah.
And because even physical accessibility is so different for each person that needs it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What I might say is accessible, someone else might be like, I don't think so. Here's why it's not.
Sure.
So it really is subjective, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What part of the country are you in?
I'm actually not in your country. I'm in Canada.
You're in Canada. Okay.
Well, at least you got better health benefits.
Yes, but also no.
Oh.
It's free, but you're waiting 17 hours to see somebody, and
that can be a long time. Yeah. Okay. And you sort of spoke on what other areas are still inaccessible, maybe not physically. What areas do you feel there's still a lot of hurdles that you need to jump through that a not disabled person wouldn't?
I mean, marriage equality,
Okay.
benefits, the benefit system, to have Social Security income.
Mm-hmm.
You're only allowed to have $2,000 in your checking account. If you have any more, they kick you off.
Wow, that's awful.
Like,
what?
Yeah, you're only allowed to have $2,000 in your checking account, and if you have any more than that, you don't have the system anymore.
Okay, so cash then. Cash is king.
Yeah, pretty much.
and a nice fireproof safe,
Right.
I guess.
I mean, it's legislated poverty is what it is. And so, like, I think
that's awful.
Because when you hear Americans with Disabilities Act, you think that it's gonna cover everything. When you realize very quickly that it doesn't cover everything.
Yeah.
Like, oh wow, we need to do that. We need to change it, update it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's get into a little bit about the documentary. The part of this documentary that kind of made me, I think, smile the most was just the footage of Camp Junaid. You know, what a pure and perfect place for that time, for those people. It had to feel so good, I can imagine. And that's all I'm doing is imagining, because obviously I'm not dealing with the same things that they were. But to know that you're going to be around people that are going through something similar, or at least are going to have a true understanding of what you're going through, and people don't tiptoe around you. I would feel like, so I don't even like getting like physically ill, let's say, because people kind of like, ooh, are you okay? Like, I don't feel like I can get close to you. And if you're feeling like that's how people are looking at you all the time,
24/7.
where they feel like they maybe can't even get close to you, like, take me to somewhere where everyone understands what I'm feeling, and let
I
me
can go and hang out with my friends and get crabs if I want to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I really liked Larry Allison, the camp director.
It said he was digging holes around the pool so kids would fall in.
Yeah.
What?
So, but to me, they were all to me, they all knew that he was joking, because he was very able-bodied, but he was going, this is obviously a place where we can be safe, and we're not, you know, just based on listening to like Andrew, for example, your podcast and some of the conversations that you had, like, I appreciate knowing that it's okay as long as it's coming from a place of love and acceptance. Let's talk like a normal, you know, people would talk, because that's all it is. It's two human beings talking.
Like
so why can't I razz on you the same way that you would razz on me, the same way I would razz on James, just like I always do.
James looks thrilled by that truth. He's like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot of things. You had said something, but we talked too far past it, and I can't remember what you had said. So
It'll come back.
It might come back to me. But I want to give a shout out though to that what's her name, Judy
Human.
Yeah,
Judy Humans. He died. Was born in 1947, and she died, I believe, in March the 4th of this year.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Oh, just recent, real recent.
Yep. She was a civil rights activist for the disabled. She has a great start with the ADA. She's the one that helped push it along. I also wanted to shout to her for changing the landscape for the disabled. You know, and that's a more positive thing that she has done. Besides her being like I want to call her the disabled Wolverine. You know, because you can't stop a Wolverine.
No,
you know what I mean?
You could not stop her.
So that was the thing I wanted to speak on that point. And then a lot of this is almost like you might want to say you're talking to like the Black civil rights thing.
Mm-hmm.
They speak the same language.
Yep.
You know, things that are happening, you cannot change. I cannot change the fact that I'm Black, or well, brown, or whatever color you want to call me.
A chocolatey mocha.
Coffee
Mocha coffee color.
There you go. Coffee gente, as they would say in Spanish or something like that.
That doesn't mean anything.
That means brown person.
Gente?
I think it's gente.
I don't
What
know.
does person mean?
We'll ask Ruth tomorrow.
You ask Ruth tomorrow. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, Ruth is our good worker that works with us along. She's a good friend of ours.
Yep.
And she's happened to be Spanish.
Mexican.
Or a Mexican, sorry.
Yeah.
Latino. So
Anyway.
that's a shout out I wanted to give to that. It's so much stuff I want to talk about, but I'm gonna let you go ahead, and I might just jump in every now and then if
That's what
Please.
That's the goal of this show. So yeah. All right. So I want to go back to Camp Gen Ed just a little bit. I have a clip about some of the life at Camp Gen Ed, and then I want to talk about some of the things that stood out to all of us about the beginning of this film of life at Gen Ed.
I mean, when Woodstock was happening, I remember being at my grandmother's listening on the transistor radio and saying, wish I could go, wish I could go, wish I could go. And then when I went to Gen Ed, it was like, and there I was in Woodstock. The music and the people. I just feel like these people are crazy, you know, I mean, in a good way.
You have to come to Ned and find yourself, you know.
So funky that it was happier when we were there. There was no outside world. Freedom, 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 freedom.
So obviously, you know, this was the joy that kind of sparked, I think, the revolution. This camp, which is what they focused on, sort of gave these kids the idea that, oh, there is such a thing as
we can have equal
yeah,
opportunities.
yeah,
we can be normal.
Yeah, and watching them, you know, run the baseball diamond and with all the assistants, and watching them slide into the pool, and you know, and hear the stories about them being able to go make out or be sexual or smoke pot and things like that. It's like, yeah, hell yeah, that's what you're supposed to do at a summer camp. And you know, I will say, I got a little concerned at the beginning, though, when they talked about how unqualified the counselors were.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so regardless of anything, there are some disabilities that require carers, right?
Yeah.
So if the people that are there to give you those cares are unqualified and don't know what they're doing, that can be concerning, I would think, but it seems like they did okay, besides, you know, maybe some of the hygiene that came along with crabs and whatnot. But
we can definitely say, because it did step into was it Willowbrook?
Oh,
I did say something about Willowbrook.
Geraldo Rivera's first big.
Oh, this is the second time we've talked about this
I
thing
know.
on this
Yeah,
show.
we've seen that, and you see how the horrendous things would happen there. You know,
I want to speak to that.
Compared to that,
Mm-hmm.
compared to that, you know, that camp was a paradise. You know, and like I said, it just everybody was just, I'm just gonna be me. There was no like hindrance, nobody.
And there was none of that.
Mm-hmm.
They were just gonna be themselves.
Right. I like that. And I like all those, when they had all those beds, that was a standout moment for me when I seen all this. And why they got all the mattresses and beds out there? But then I went down to the low tharts. I like, they all handicapped. They're just going to be rolling all over the place, you know.
Yeah.
But then it turned out to be crabs. I'm like, crabs. Oh, okay. That makes sense, you know.
I guess we're gonna take these outside and let them air out for a bit.
They don't air out.
Yeah,
but they were happy though. You know, they
or burn them instead again.
Yeah,
they had so much people putting them down so much. They were even happier that people got crabs. You know, that was a fun thing. It's like, I don't know if you watched. Did you watch the end of it? Everybody watched the documentary where the lady got what did she get? Gonorrhea.
Mm-hmm. And she was stoked
she was
about
so
it.
happy she got gonorrhea and everything.
He was so happy. Her name was Denise or something. Yeah.
Right. Just to be thought of as this normal.
A sexual person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah, I got it.
She
Because
was cool.
that means I'm getting laid. So yeah.
I want to talk about the.
Please do.
Okay.
Yep.
So we had the Geraldo segment, but I want to back up just a bit to the camp. So the first thing I thought of when I saw camp, regardless of disability, was money.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the haves and the have-nots. So there were children who had the ability to go to camp, but just as many as there were many more that could not go to camp. And those are the kids that I think ended up in the institution because their parents couldn't pay for it. They couldn't take care of them. They just didn't have the resources. And I think they didn't quite, I don't know. I feel like more time should be spent on that, but you could probably do a whole documentary on the ones that weren't getting resources. So this at least was focused on the changes that were made. But then of course, Geraldo Rivera's big first
Expose,
time was on Willowbrook. And I fully believe in my heart that he was taking advantage of these people.
Oh, of course
here.
he was. Without even batting an eye. Of course he was.
Right.
He wanted the ratings.
Right.
He
Yes.
knew it would shock value.
Right. And he became famous, and that
Well,
was
he didn't
one of
get
the,
famous off of that, I don't think.
he got his first job.
Not until 10 years later when that actually came up. 10 years later is when his little thing on the
but he became a
Rikers
national
Island or whatever it was.
reporter after this.
Yep.
And he got all these-
and he had his
he just
weird
turned the
show
camera
that he
around.
did.
Yep. I think he got more famous when he got hit in the nose with the chair. You know.
What?
When he had a talk show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had like a Jerry Springer-esque talk show.
Yeah.
For a
It
while
was
there.
before Jerry Springer.
No, he got
But
hit in the
anyway.
head with a chair, you know. I mean, the nose.
Anyway.
Okay.
The point is that he's coming through with a camera and he's showing the world what it really looks like. And there is value in that. People weren't aware that this was happening. The families were very aware. The people it's happening to are aware, and the world was not. But there was a better way to handle that. There were people being taken advantage of. And
Well, I would have been like, did you pay the families? Did
Yeah.
you like? And of course they didn't.
no compensation. And even to this day, none of those people have names. Like, we don't know who they are in that video. And that video still circulates. That's humiliating.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, this is the second episode that we've done that had the Willowbrook footage, and thankfully in this one they didn't stay on it too long.
Yeah, that was cool.
You know, when we did Cropsy for our Halloween episode, they spent quite a bit of time on that, and that is just the most, you know, disturbing, horrible treatment of human beings that you can imagine.
Dark too.
Yeah, it's awful. And they even mentioned that one of the campers at Gen Ed was at Willowbrook, and he was eating so much that he would vomit because he was used to only getting 3 minutes. You know, what's 3 minutes to eat, Andrew? I mean,
like, I don't even know.
Especially with
How do you-
assistance.
What?
I can't eat in 3 minutes, and I have hands that aren't, you know, disabled at all. And if I'm having to get those cares, you know, what are you going to do with that? You eat as much as you can.
And there was one carer for 50 people.
Yeah, no
There's
thanks.
no way. There were so many things
I
wrong.
mean, I saw Cropsy 2 a couple years ago, and I remember they were trying to tie it to like the boogeyman, right? The scary,
Right.
Yep. And like, there's so many problems with the way that was framed too. Of like, oh, you're framing the disabled person potentially as like,
oh
this
my God,
bad,
that's
horrible
right.
creature. And so like it's a shame that when we look at horror, to go on a total side tangent right
Please
now.
do.
Yes, please.
When we look at like horror in film, usually it's just a disabled person.
Yep. Yeah, you've got
Oh my God.
Leatherface, you've got The Hills Have Eyes, you've got
Hunchback of Notre Dame.
well, that wasn't
Yeah.
That's
Well, that's
the
the
It's
horror,
a
but-
disabled person.
Yeah.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was the protagonist though. But anyway, yeah,
You got a great point.
I definitely hear
They're
what you're saying
portrayed
though,
as
yeah.
monsters, and that's something that's prevalent in our history.
Yep. So when they're at Gen Ed, they do a lot of, they'll sit around and I don't know if it was just part of the documentary or the filmmaking that they were taking back then, but they would do some sort of like what do you call it? Like group sessions where they all would talk about some of the things that they're struggling with. And
that was cool.
Yeah,
was
and that was
very
actually
cool.
a good look into which by the way, this isn't in my notes, but one thing I really enjoyed about this was, and I can't remember the kids' names, but the one girl was her speech was very like she was
Very
having
slow.
having trouble speaking, but the other kid understood
Totally got
exactly
it,
what
yep.
she was saying. I'm like, oh, that's so good. Like I love that
more
they're
people
so
could
close.
understand, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, the part that broke my heart the most, and as a parent, kind of hurts to hear, is when they were talking about their parents. They mentioned the overprotectiveness of their parents and how they resented, and some of them even said they hated their parents for it. And in the same breath, they were saying they knew their parents were doing the best they could, and they were trying to keep them safe, especially back then in a world where they knew that those sort of institutions were out there, and they were, who wants their kid in that? Like, my hope is that the kids at Willowbrook, their parents didn't know that they were going through that, but how could you not, unless you're literally, you're giving them
never
away
go,
and you never go there, but the kids didn't want to be kept in a bubble. I mean, who of us
Nobody would.
did? You don't want to be held so tight that you never have the chance to go out and experience getting in trouble.
And make a mistake and
Yeah. and
Have human experiences like everyone else.
absolutely, yeah. And the hardest part about it all was when they talked about being denied their privacy, which I can tell you right now, that's something that I take for granted every single day, I think, because I love being by myself. But if I can't be, my God, like,
I mean, I think it's also privacy in the bathroom,
everything,
privacy in the
yeah.
shower, like all those things we take for granted, of being able to do it not only by yourself, but to have that privacy.
Mhm.
I
Go
mean,
ahead.
just today, for me to get up, I had somebody with me in the shower,
Mhm.
had somebody with me in the toilet, had somebody with and it's fine. You get used to it.
Mhm.
You get used to like the moments of realizing you need somebody, and you just kind of let it go because
Mhm.
you don't really have a choice. And so, but when you do have moments when you're alone, you're like, oh wow, this is what it means to be alone with my own thoughts, with myself. Or for me, when it's like I get to be alone with somebody that I'm messing around with or dating,
Yeah.
like, wow, okay, we get to be alone in that way too.
Yeah.
So I think like I definitely feel that sense of the need for the want for privacy.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you, while you were talking, I had a question, and it's probably going to slip my mind before I get there because I'm trying really hard to pull it out of my brain before I stop talking. Privacy. One of the things. So I listened to an episode of yours where you and I slipped. The guy's name slips my mind, but he's an Australian porn star that you talked to.
Woods.
What was it?
Gabe Woods.
Yeah, and
Nice name.
and you talked about the difference between being able to do things at a pace of your carer. And that's another thing that just blows my mind when I think, when I heard you guys talking about that and going, I get frustrated because James takes too long to come back from lunch and we got to get back to work,
James is like, what?
This is
Side eye, major
hold on,
side
wait just a
eye.
minute,
Yeah.
But and that but to think about it in a way, and I'm just trying to I guess relate in that little way, but going, I have trouble being patient enough for the people around me when I have, but just being able to come to a point where you can say, I guess this is how long it's going to take, and I've got to be good with that. That to fanboy a little bit. That was a part that I just felt like talking to you about, I guess.
And thank you for bringing that up. I mean, it is really hard to constantly have to wait for somebody to help you. I mean, I do have moments where I'm like, fuck, I just wish you would hurry up. Just go faster. Like, come on. But at the same time, without them, I couldn't have my life.
Right.
So I have to just be grateful that they're there and grateful that I live in a home where care is attached.
Yeah.
So they're not with me 24/7. Like I'm alone right now. But if I needed something right now, I could phone them and say, hey, can somebody be here?
Right.
Those kind of systems are not very common.
Wow.
And so to have something like that, to have a carer available when you need them, within 10 minutes is pretty unheard of. And so,
and is that because of Canadian healthcare? Is that because of a program you're with, or what? Where does that come from?
I'm with Margin Canada.
Okay.
So it's partly the program and partly our healthcare system. But to get into a program like this, like I buy my own food, I run my own house. It's my house. But when I need somebody, when they come get me up in the morning, help me with lunch, help me with dinner, and put me to bed. But a lot of people don't get them, and to get into a housing situation like this, you have to wait 10 to 15 years.
Holy shit.
So as much as I can be like, oh fuck, I need somebody, it's so annoying. And I do. If you follow my Instagram, I talk about the feelings around that a lot. But I'm very lucky that I have what I have, and I try to remember how lucky I am. And also from the carer's point of view, taking care of people is not an easy job.
Nope.
It's a lot of using your body to help somebody else to have their life. So I try to remember how grateful I am to have them there.
But you also don't have control, and that's got to be so hard.
Yeah, that part can be really frustrating.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I know what I want to do, but my body is like, nope, sorry, you can't do that.
Control, yeah.
Yeah. And then to get into the, we're not even talking about the documentary right now, but that's perfectly fine. To get into the idea that you are getting that all the touch, the interaction, the things like that, it's all so clinical, and it's all, for a purpose to things that like we take for granted that, you are dealing with, and then having, the just being able to differentiate, I guess, between
clinical touch and
and that to me, and that's why your story is so intriguing to me, because you're so open about that sort of thing, and like the sexuality behind it, and the challenges that come along with it, and that, again, to tie it into the documentary, that was probably my favorite part about this, is because you just a lot of people who are able-bodied probably never, ever, ever, ever think about the fact that is a need, that is still a desire. It is, you don't go, oh, well, I'm disabled, so all of a sudden my sexuality goes away. Like what?
And I would challenge that and say it comes stronger, actually, which sounds like a big innuendo right there. But
no, but that's really important. And the fact that people don't think about that is just part of the problem.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
And your Instagram and your podcast has the ability to reach people that from the queer disabled community. I mean, we're learning, but we are not the intended audience. You're reaching out to people like you to feel like they're not alone.
Yes, but I also think that you are the intended audience. And I love talking to non-disabled folks, because they need somebody to give them that light bulb moment that go, oh, wow, I never thought about that. And so I always say, like, when you become disabled, are you not going to want to get off?
Yeah.
Right.
When you become disabled, are you not going to want to have a good fuck? Probably you are. So let's talk about it.
Right.
And so
That's amazing.
I like giving them people that light bulb moment, because most people, when they're doing ableist things, they don't mean it. They genuinely don't mean it. They just don't know any better.
Mhm.
So if I can use my platform to guide you instead of screaming at you,
That's so
then,
much kindness for the world. How do you manage that?
oh, I have my days where I'm fucking pissed off, but I try really hard to be kind because there are things with the world that I don't know, and I you know, as a white disabled person too, I have to sometimes sit down and shut up because my experience is not, you know,
The same,
is not
yeah.
is not the same as someone who is a disabled person of color.
Yep.
So sometimes I too have to be like, oh yeah, that's not my space. I'll be quiet.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing all that, and please at any point keep sharing it. But we're just gonna I'm going to use a cattle prod to get us back on the.
Well, I got a question.
Oh yeah, go for it.
You said you're in Canada, right? Does the ADA have anything to do with Canada?
No.
Nope.
What kind of thing was
The
implemented?
CDA.
CDA.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a thing.
What's going on in Canada? No,
we have right now. We're waiting to get something like the Canadians with Disabilities Act passed. It's taking 1 million years. Who knows when it'll be passed? Each province has their own disability charter
really?
and law. But so that's like for you guys, each state would have their own disability law. But the trouble is the same with the ADA. It's not being properly enforced.
Right.
And nobody knows what to do. Like, for instance, in Canada right now and in Ontario right now, if I wanted to apply for medical assistance in dying because my pain was too much, instead of giving me help, I could apply to basically end my life. And 2 doctors have to sign off, and they would sign off.
Wow.
Instead of finding ways to give me accessible housing, finding ways to give me care, they would say, oh, you want to kill yourself? Go ahead.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, that kind of falls into they want us all dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's crazy.
If you're gone, you're no longer our
Right,
problem,
because
kind of thing.
if the body, the mind is
The mental mind.
We ain't gonna say the mental mind, but I'm gonna say the mind is the mind. It goes on. That's why when you said it might be even stronger sex drive, because you're not using the body, but your mind is strong as ever.
Yeah,
and that's pushing you. You know, I understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a very strong sex drive because I don't get to access my sexuality as freely as anyone else would. So when that's why, you know, I'll be blunt. I work with sex workers that have my needs met, which is great. But again, that's not the same as like intimacy with somebody that wants to be there. You're paying for their time, and that's great, and I'm thankful for them. But again, it's transactional. So you know, when the people in the movie say, "Oh, we got crabs, we got gonorrhea," they were happy because like, wow,
because it was
somebody like genuinely wanted to be with them.
Yep, someone wanted to be with me, and I wanted to be with them, and we went and got gonorrhea together. So it's you know the probably the first time that I've ever heard of somebody being excited about that sort of thing. But hey, you know, I think I can understand that to the best of, you know, what I can understand.
Gonorrhea to move her on to get a master's in sexuality.
And human
let me get gonorrhea if I can move on to something.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
I don't. Okay.
Anyway, cattle prod back to.
Okay, here we go. All right. Camp Jeanette ignited a spark in many of these young minds. They were very clear that they didn't feel shame about their disability, but they felt excluded. And when they were at Camp Jeanette, they felt empowered, and they took that empowerment with them and said, I'm going to fight to make the world a little bit like Camp Jeanette. Enter the powerhouse of a woman that we've already talked about, Judy Human, the founder of Disabled in Action and the ringleader of almost every single protest, march, lobby toward disabled rights at this time. Can we talk about how much of a powerhouse she was? Because that was fucking awesome.
She is a powerhouse. Her words is like, our anger was fury that sparked. But was sparked by a professional. I mean, hold on. Our anger. I'm getting all twisted up myself now. I said our anger was a fury sparked by profound injustice, wrong that deserved in fear, which is like rage, madness, outrage, which with itself, we were able to rip a hole in the status quo.
That's beautiful.
I like, wow. You
wow.
go head on, girl. Get it. You know, I want to join her cause already. You know what I'm saying?
She was a force.
Yes, she was. And she's strong, you know.
Was it Nixon? Oh, go ahead.
She's the one that kept on, you know, when they went down to California and they was going to walk out the building, he said, you do not go anywhere until you call me. And I will tell you when you're supposed to leave. They said, we were scared of her more than the government. You know, like, wow. Go ahead on, girl.
Okay. Was it Nixon when they first brought it to the table that said, well, we just don't think this is going to affect enough Americans? And and then I think that was her first protest in New York City.
Right.
And
Yeah. They going through presidents and congressmen and senators and all that stuff, everyone basically saying, and I think you're right. I think it was Nixon. How many people is this really going to serve? You know, like
that was enraging.
Like, are we going to spend all this money to just, you know, help the couple of you that are in here? And that's when she and her disabled, that's when she and her disabled army took to the streets and started blocking city blocks.
It was incredible.
Yeah. They marched on the Capitol. They set up camp at the Health, Education, and Welfare Building, refusing to leave until they signed the 504, which was, if I remember right, that was the part of legislation that said nobody will be excluded
based on their
based on any kind of, and unfortunately I don't have the wording here in my notes.
As far as I understand, it was a amendment to the Rehabilitation Act to ensure that everybody with disabilities wasn't excluded based on their access needs.
Right.
Yep. Everybody can receive federal governments and funds, and they were not forbid discrimination as far as being employees. No one could put them down for being disabled or anything like that.
Yeah, deny employment. Or anything
it was
like
pretty cool. That's a pretty good act.
Yeah, and I think
it's a very small statement that had a big impact.
For sure. And you know, that was what they talked about. Was they said, oh shit, there's a piece in there that could apply to us and the things we're dealing with.
And she said she snuck it in at the end, and I thought that's what every congressman says. We're going to sneak it in at the end.
Yeah, yep. You know, but when they were in the HEW building, refusing to leave until they signed, to me that was one of the most exciting parts. Because you know, the FBI and the rest of the whoever else is you know, cutting off hot water, they're cutting off phone lines, and in true disabled resiliency, they go, well, guess what? We have all the motherfuckers that know how to communicate without the phones because they can't hear.
That was incredible. The deaf community comes alive.
Probably my favorite part was when they said the deaf people just looked out the windows and signed to their buddies down there, and they're getting the information back and forth.
It was so good.
Fucking awesome.
I like the way they made the ice box out of the air conditioning unit.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I like, you go.
Yeah,
that's something.
Yep. Anything else to add about the? I have something. I also thought it was really cool when they teamed up with the Black Panthers.
Yes, there we go.
I was going to say
that's a big one
during this demonstration.
Black Panthers was. Go ahead, Joe.
Go ahead.
Black Panthers, and all at the 25 days they supply all their meals to all the protesters,
showering, bathing,
all that stuff. You know, and Black Panthers also. I mean, they got a bad rep because
they were labeled as terrorists by the FBI.
Well, because they was militant and being black.
But they were not terrorists.
You know, being black, being a black man. Okay, we ain't going to go there. Anyway.
Nope.
So.
I mean, we can totally go there.
Yeah, we can.
We can't go there. We're talking about the documentary, you know, and just because I'm black and I'm just too cool.
We're here for you.
Hold on.
You know,
Hold on, you're black?
Well, I'm brown. I'm brown, but you know, when they on news, we're always black. You know, I was like, God damn, how can they tell us in the nighttime if we're black and night is black? So, I mean, we saw a black man running last night. What, did you? Really? I mean, come on now. You didn't see anybody. And there's like 200,000 of them running around anyway. And it's nighttime. So what are you talking about? So anyway.
That's my favorite podcast aside ever.
King James is
it's ridiculous. But I have to say, with the action that this lady did, this Judy Human, and combining them with the civil rights people moving together and them all working as a unit, they all did this.
Mm.
Yep.
And they worked. And what made it possible is that all of them came together.
I've got a little clip here about when the
Okay,
Black
go ahead.
Panthers stepped in, just so we can keep this rolling.
Please.
Keep it rolling. I'm apologizing.
There were just so many people trying to figure out how to eat, how to wash, where are we going to get food, where are we going to get blankets. Brad Lomax was the one who had the idea to call the Black Panthers. Brad could hardly speak, but he could gesture. And he got his point across.
The Panthers would bring a hot meal for dinner, and then they would leave food for breakfast and lunch. For nothing, no money, no nothing. I ended up, after the meeting, I said to this guy, I said, I don't get it. You're the Black Panther Party and you don't have a ton of resources. They had a food kitchen in Oakland. Why are you choosing to feed us? He said to me, you are trying to make the world a better place. And that's what we are about. We are about making the world a better place for everybody. So if you're going to go to the trouble to stay here and sleep on this floor, we're going to make sure you get fed. That's how we survived.
So fucking cool.
Just goosebumps.
Yep. They're getting all this pushback from this Califano motherfucker.
Yeah.
Who then... So just to kind of push forward a little bit, who then sends a guy to stand in for him and basically offer equal but separate negotiations.
That poor fucking guy.
I know. I felt so bad for him.
Do you think he knew what he was going to get into that
No
day?
way.
No, he has no fucking idea. That poor guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's
thrown under the bus by Califano.
I took the wrong internship.
He made a mistake by thinking that the body may not work right. So he thought the mind didn't work right as well, but he ran into something else.
Oh my!
I hope they paid him.
He ran into the room and hid himself.
He got dragged out of whatever room he was hiding in.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, my notes just closed, so I'm nothing without my magic tablet here. So he sends that poor guy in for him and basically offer the equal but separate stuff. The congressman then goes and, basically kicks his door down and says, get back in that room because now you're going to go sit in there and answer their questions and look them in the face.
Yep.
Because if you're the one that Califano's sending, then you're the one that gets to talk. So sorry, motherfucker, but here you go. And that's when the bad boss bitch herself, Judy, comes in and addresses this dude.
Was so mad. Oh
yeah. And she says, we will accept
good.
nothing less than equal treatment.
Get it.
For concrete, somebody's going to have to knock down some walls, and somebody's going to have to make school teachers available and classrooms available. But that is the price that we've said that we've been willing to pay for 200 years to make people accessible to the mainstream.
Whether there was a Section 504, there was a Brown versus Board of Education. The harassment, the lack of equity that has been provided for disabled individuals, and that now is even being discussed by the administration, is so intolerable that I can't quite put it into words. I can tell you that every time you raise issues of separate but equal, the outrage of disabled individuals across this country is going to continue. It is going to be ignited. There will be more takeovers of buildings until finally maybe you begin to understand our position. We will no longer allow the government to oppress disabled individuals. We want the law enforced. We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Exactly.
He was so scared.
That was one of my favorite lines.
Yep.
Get it.
Man, she's handling it.
I love
but
that.
you can hear in her voice when she says that, you can hear what she's really saying underneath all of that is, if you give me this, then I get to have joy.
Yeah.
If
Oh my
you give us
God.
this- because all they see her in that moment is this angry disabled woman who's making trouble.
Yeah.
But if she had access and they all had access, then they would see happy disabled people. And I think that's something that people don't think about. If you give me access to something, you'll see my joy. You'll see, like, that's why the camp was so powerful, I think, because they get to have joy there.
That's a great point.
That is the point right there that I want to isolate. I want to isolate your words right there and put that all over our social media, because that was beautiful, man. Thank you for saying that, because that was something I hadn't thought of in that way. So yeah, that's why we fucking brought you here, man. You're the best.
Amazing.
All right, so hip hip hooray! It gets signed, right? Things start to get better. Whether they're great or not, that's to be determined. But
change is happening.
Until Reagan shows up, of course, and starts trying to repeal things. Once again, though, the disabled army marches and the American with Disabilities Act makes its way to the table. This is the part where a lot of information sort of gets shoved into the last bit of this documentary. So if I have any criticism of the documentary, it's that it probably could have been 3 to 4 hours long and still been,
just as captivating.
Had as much information. I do feel like they kind of they elongated it toward the beginning and then went, shit, we're already at an hour. We need to get all the rest of this in. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of how it felt.
It could have been a series. I think it could have been like an 8.
Oh my God, a series would have been amazing.
A 3-part Netflix series. I would have watched that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But a very powerful demonstration then begins where people with disabilities come out of their wheelchairs and crutches and start to pull themselves up the steps of the Capitol building, which,
cried.
Although it's hard to watch, it was one of the more powerful images. That kid that's going, nope, I'm not giving up.
It was on the cover of Time magazine and was
God.
like, they said it was the moment that the tide turned, was that little girl crawling up the steps. Even though there were tons of people with her, that photo of her doing it is what changed it.
Yep. And finally, President Bush, after Nixon, Ford, Carter, and 2 terms of Reagan, H.W. Bush finally signs the ADA, putting into place the act that will be the building block for fair treatment and accessibility to disabled folks around the country.
And I think that's the part that we should also talk about. So it was the building block. It wasn't the be all and end all. It was just a block. And there's still so much more to go.
It's the first step.
But it was like the first step. And I think the next step is attitude, because the attitude, no matter how many ramps you put in somewhere, no matter how many elevators you put in a building, no matter how much physical access you can put in a place, if the person is, and I mean this in the kindest way possible, if they're uneducated and ignorant to the lived experience, it doesn't matter. So that's why I do what I do, because I want to give people that moment to ask questions. And I want to pose it to the 3 of you. Do you have any burning disability questions that you want to?
Oh, people looking at me.
Yeah, we're looking at you now.
Because my sisters work CNAs. So to take care of people, people that are special with disabilities and everything, I see them do it all the time.
Well, and you
25, 30 years for one sister.
Yeah.
I think one sister, she just started, I think she got maybe 8 or 9 years. My whole family, just about all of them are CNA, a lot of them.
Oh, great.
So my question to you is, when do not you guys, that's not what I want to say, I'm sorry. When does you think that the disabled people want to say, stop doing that to me, stop? How do they do that? How do they just, because there's things that SCNAs and stuff they do, like you say, when they just grab, touch. What's the way that you tell them to stop? Because they might be going overboard, or how's that?
I mean, you can say stop. You can just say, hey, stop. But I think, because
people ignore you, though. They ignore that because they're counting you as not being able to think rationally, because they're looking at their handicap more than they're looking at anything else.
If they ignore me, I'm going to raise fucking hell.
Okay.
You're not going to ignore me, because I'm not going to let you ignore me, because I'm going to tell you what I want. But I understand also the need of, like I was saying, like we were saying earlier, care is not an easy job. It's really hard. It's really easy to hurt your body or get burnt out. But I try when a care worker comes into my space, even if I'm tired, even if I don't really want to deal with it, I try to remember, like, if I were in their shoes and they're just trying to help me, how would I want to be treated? And also, a lot of care workers are in where I live, they're not white folks. So they're people of color. They're from a different part of the world. They're from a different culture entirely. So I have to remember my own kind of white supremacy, and like, if I bring this person in here and I treat them like shit, that's kind of horrible. I have to remember that they're from a different kind of experience than me, and also be grateful that they're there at all trying to make a living. So you really do have to. I can scream and yell and be angry, and I have done, but I find that doesn't really get me anywhere. Like, that alienates you from the care you need. And so I try to be really chill. I try to be their friend. I try to make jokes. I try to laugh with them. I try to, like, most of them I have their phone numbers, because, you know, if I need something from them and they're not here, I can just text them. So like, I try to make it, for me, I try to make it really friendly, because I understand how important it is, and how without them I wouldn't be able to do what I do.
And trying to, you know, so James and I both come from the healthcare world. We both worked maintenance and other type of jobs in healthcare, where we have had to interact. The last place that we worked together before our current job, there was a whole, what do you call it? Like a, yeah, ward sounds
group.
A whole part of the facility, I guess, that focused on, well, it was trachs, so it was like pulmonary care. But there was a lot of cerebral palsy. There was a lot of quadriplegics.
The best of the palsy.
There was, you know, and most of them had trachs, you know, but I feel very grateful for having accepted that job, because what it does, and what you start to see, is, first of all, understanding that this is not just a normal job where we are going into somebody's apartment and fixing their air conditioner. This is
you're bonding with that person.
Yeah.
Really,
and being able to differentiate between, you are not just a job that I have to do, which unfortunately that's, I think, where a lot of the CNAs and cares people can fall into that, especially if it's I would imagine in somewhere like a hospital or a care center, where they're having to go room to room to room to room, where, you know, it's almost a checklist at that point. Well, I don't want to be a bullet on your checklist. I want to be, you know, I'm a human being that needs, you know, the tenderness and the friendliness and of any other human being. So I always used to coach my team and say, look, we have an opportunity to be something to all of our residents that live here that is different from what their care workers are. We get to be the person that comes in and fix their air conditioning. You know, we get to be, we don't have to help them with cares that, you know, what human being wants somebody to have to help them go to the bathroom? Probably nobody wants that, right?
Yeah.
They're in a place that they have to, right? So
if I'm gonna have somebody else with me in the bathroom, we're doing something else differently entirely than that.
Right.
If someone's gonna be with me in the bathroom stall, we're not going pee.
That's hilarious.
I question whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
That's the thing that
But anyway, just to finish up that thought, I think for me, I feel very fortunate to have been in that world and kind of gain relationships with people that are struggling or with where their life is at that point,
right? And
people that were either become disabled or were born disabled or however that may be, and just I will always be grateful for that, because it did open my eyes to a lot of things that I didn't know before. It's similarly to this conversation right now.
Right.
So that's kind of my addition.
Same way
there.
with me too.
Yeah.
You know, first of all, I'd like to say that as people that don't have those disabilities, we think of ourselves as being something. But to have humility is the best thing ever when you deal, you know, because the people that me and Jeff met, I used to kind of cringe inside when I used to see people with handicaps. But going in the room and they talking to you, I'm slow talking at first. Then after a while, you don't even see the handicap no more. You just hear as people, as persons. You know, hey, wait, what you got there? You got that bottle of Jack you got hidden behind there? You know, stuff like that, you know. And then, you know, because we did have one that used to have a bottle
Andrew's
of Jack, and I
laughing.
would always try to get it from him,
Listen,
but he would never
so
let
you
me
want to bring
have
me a
it.
bottle of Jack? I'm here
Right.
for it. Let's go.
You know, and stuff like that. And then one of them died, you know, and it was, you could feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You could feel it.
And I've had care staff where I live. I've had people where I live who work here leave and go on to different positions. And it's hard because you see them for 5, 6, 7 years. And they, you know, to be blunt, they wipe your ass every day. And all of a sudden they're gone. And it's like, well, what do you mean I got to start again with someone new?
I'm kind of used to the way that you did it, and you know, we have an understanding at this point. So, yeah, Katie, I think has a question for you, Andrew.
Yes.
Of course.
Okay, so we would like to think of ourselves as allies. We'd like to be here to be able to reach out to people in the non-disabled community and help them understand in a more respectful way how to be better and how to
not super ableist, yeah.
Right. Thank you. And so what would you recommend that we do to be better allies?
Oh, that's a big question. How many hours do we have? To be better allies, I would say, no, you're going to fuck up. You're going to make a mistake. You're going to pull your foot in your mouth. You're going to say an ableist thing. You're going to, you know, you're going to do something
hard.
Wrong.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, in my view, and I can only speak for me, but for me as a disabled person, that doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make you, like, I hate it when other disabled people will say, oh, you're an ableist, that's all you are. It's like, well, gee, cool. You're not really opening the door to, like, the possibility for change here and growth and, like, learning. Like, and I just think that if I call you an ableist and then I walk away and I, like, don't offer to help you learn.
You're not creating a new ally.
Yeah, and I'm not creating conversation so you can grow. And I think the
It's
biggest thing I could offer is, like, you're going to fuck up and that's okay.
Yeah. And also, I and you correct me if I'm wrong, but it does a lot more good to say that comment came across as very ableist of you.
Yeah.
You know, and then depending on, I guess, how they respond at that point, it's like,
or, you know, hey, that joke you made, I know you were trying to make a joke, but it was ableist. I mean, the biggest example and right now that I can think about is Mitch McConnell's been made fun of recently for freezing up during his press conferences. Look, I think the man is abhorrent. I think his policies are really gross.
Yep.
And I don't think he should be doing that. But to make fun of solely whatever medical issue he's going through and then say, well, he's a bad person, so that's okay. No, it isn't okay.
Like,
because he's not going to see your tweets about it,
Right.
but I will.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, that goes into a lot of different areas of, you know, internet trolling and things like that. The people you're making fun of aren't seeing it, but the people that maybe are in a similar, you know, thing in that community, that they're the ones that see it. The people that you quote unquote care about, your loved ones, your community, they're the ones seeing it, and they're seeing you being a dick. And you know, like based on somebody's, you know, ailment or whatever they're dealing with, like that's fucked. You don't have to like his policies. As a matter of fact, you know, it's
just the things he says.
Like his policies if you're a human. But I mean, other than that, like he, you know, and when he froze up a few weeks ago, I saw so many memes and I did so many tweets about it being like, guys, can we just not make fun of his medical issue, please? Make fun of everything else. No problem.
His terrible policies, the stupid things he says, but he's having a problem right now.
No, it's I mean, you know, and this conversation we're having right now where it's open and we can talk about it, I don't think we're doing that enough in disability activism. I think that, you know, it's very black and white, and I think there's nuance, and I think people need to be kind of given a gentle push into, why does disability make you uncomfortable? Let's talk about that. Where does that come from? That's ableism. But it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It just means you need the experience to grow.
Right.
They're afraid of something they don't know and they don't understand. And that lack of understanding is causing that fear. And if we can open it, like you said, to more understanding and more experiences, I think they're just going to become allies.
And for my own story, and from what it sounds like, everyone, Matt included, that was, you know, talking, exposure is huge.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't you know, when we started talking about this episode tonight, I asked Matt, like, hey, do you have any friends with disabilities that might be interested in being, and we're both like racking our brain going, my God, I don't think I do, you know, besides, you know, a couple people I reached out at one point, but I'm like, well, that's kind of a problem, you know, not because I'm trying to be exclusive or anything, but, you know, exposure to and interacting with in a positive light and all that. I mean, that's huge. That's huge. And the more I think we can do that, and you know, the world of podcasting is something that is available to anybody. And, you know, it's might be a small piece, but it has potential for a long reach. And so I agree with you. I think that these type of things, these kind of conversations can go a long way in exposing people to all different aspects. And that's why from episode 1 of our show, you know, and the reason we pick the crew that we pick and everything is because we want people from all the different walks of life and be able to experience things from people's viewpoints and just learn how to have an open mind and be kind to each other, which is how I end every single show. And so that's, yeah, I think this is wonderful. So thank you. And on the final piece from the documentary, a few of them meet up in a dirt field that was once called Camp Gen Ed, a camp that was opened in 1951 but was shut down in 1977 because of financial difficulties. They go there and talk about how they want to get out of their wheelchairs and kiss the hallowed ground that started the revolution. It was a beautiful ending. It was, I know Judy was there and a couple other people, and I just thought it ended really well. Again, like I said, they sort of packed a lot of information into the last 20 minutes or so, but then they ended back at Camp Gen Ed, and I thought it ended very beautifully. How did we feel after the credits roll? Katie, let's start with you.
It's such a roller coaster, from the highest of highs when they're at Camp Gen Ed to the lows of being in the State House and trying to get a hold of someone and watching them suffer and going around in the U-Haul. She made a joke about it, but my God, that is so tragic to be put in a U-Haul in a wheelchair and then watch them come down. It was...
But it was ingenious and resourceful,
right?
You know, which was to me, I kind of, and just to kind of commiserate there, I kind of celebrated when they found that they're like, you know what, we worked around it. You might not be offering me public transportation, but we're gonna find a way to fucking get there.
Of course,
you know. But I agree with you that it was sad to have to watch that was, you know, going on. So.
I like that the ending we had the ADA being passed, because I know that when I went to school as a kid, you know, we saw the ramps, we saw the elevators, we saw the lifts, we saw the handicap button with the wheelchair. So I knew that it existed for millennials, but I knew that at least until the 70s, it didn't exist. My grandma lived on the 3rd floor of this apartment building with the steepest stairs. And because it was built before 1972, they didn't have to put an elevator in, and she couldn't afford to move. And so she would, at 75, would walk up 3 flights of stairs with her groceries. And so that had always been a part of my life, watching grandma do that and not understanding why they didn't have to put an elevator in. And so, yeah, so watching it and having that fulfillment of the ADA, just at least starting to make change, was fulfilling, but it just felt like there's so much left to do at the end.
Yep. James, how about you, man? Credits roll. What's going on in that big brown heart of yours?
Well, it started off with the kids with the disabilities acting just like anybody else in this world. And at the end of the credits, it ended the same way. They were acting just like anybody. They had kids. Yep. They had a lot of things going on just like anybody else in the world. So I like it. I like that. I like the point. We know they all have disabilities, but we also know they're all humans from the beginning to the end.
Yep.
And that's what I like about that.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, you watched this 4 times.
4 times.
Was it a different feeling every time it ended, or was it a similar?
You know, it's hard to see when some of them passed away, some of them aren't around anymore, and it's hard to see that because like those people changed the world. They, and again, those people were not like the lead of that documentary. Obviously, we followed Judy's story,
right?
But they, they started this thing that I think it was hard to know, like, oh, you're not around anymore. Like, and knowing that Judy just passed a few months ago.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to know that all this like Crip knowledge and all this Crip power is gone in the world. And people don't know that it's there because they might not watch the documentary. So to know that these great minds are going to just go, that was hard. But I think, again, I wanted like 2 hours of them just at camp.
Yeah,
I wanted
same.
It was beautiful.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. Is there? I know there is, but who? And not to put you on the spot here, but who are the next big names in Crip power?
Obviously, me. No.
Besides Andrew Gurza, yeah.
No.
Number 1.
But there's so many different people who are doing great work. I think of Emily Liddell, who does stuff around access, but also being Jewish and disabled, like me.
Oh, I think I follow her.
Yeah, she's fantastic. I think of Alice Wong, does great stuff around being Asian and disabled. There's so many different levels of disability that and I think also the movie doesn't focus on like intellectual disability so much.
Right.
I'd love to see that in like Crip Camp 2, show that those communities as well, because they weren't really focused on a lot. But there's so many different actors doing great work. I love seeing Ryan O'Connell's doing stuff in Hollywood around disability. Like, there's so many cool people doing great stuff.
Yeah, and when you talked about the I don't remember how you worded it, but not physically disabled, but more, mentally disabled and things like that. Intellectually, yeah. That's that's got to be such a difficult, because it might be more difficult for them to advocate for themselves. Yeah. And, where Judy and the lot were able to speak very clearly and, intelligently and get that and articulate in a way that had to be listened to. These folks with intellectual disabilities, they might not have the same, might not be able to articulate in the same way, and that's got to be because then there's one more thing you're relying on other people to do, and that's got to be frustrating for everyone involved too.
I'm very privileged that I can speak, and I have my intellectual faculties are there. If I couldn't communicate the same way, like, it would terrify me to think someone else has to say what I'm saying. What if they get it wrong? What if they say the wrong thing? What if they lie? What if they're like, that's
or if they misunderstood what I was trying to say?
Yeah.
You say, in a way, their disability actually was a help to them, if you think about it, because when they were surrounding Carter's house and the police was called, they drove up there ready to take them out. They said it was all handicapped people. We're just going to stay across the street and not bother them. We're going to leave them alone. We're not going to go up into the federal house and rip all these handicapped people out. How would that look?
Right.
So in a way, that was a plus to them also.
I mean, but they have done it. Like, they had, during COVID, there was a protest for something, I think for COVID, and people went to some senator office to disabled people, and they were dragged out by cops.
Yeah.
So
they don't have that fear anymore.
Any of that fear that was there in the 70s is probably gone now. But okay, anything else we want to get into before we get into our ratings? We're over our normal run time, but I'm okay with that. All right, finally, we've come to the time in our show where we need to rate this documentary with an official documentary rating. Each crew member scores the documentary on a scale of 1 to 10 items, with 1 being as bad as an uncontrolled case of camp crabs and 10 being as good as a summer camp makeout session. Although to them, I guess the uncontrolled camp crabs weren't that bad, but because it meant something good for them. But anyway, I don't think any of them really wanted the crabs. They just wanted the sex. But anyway, the item that is used for scoring each week changes depending on the content of the documentary that they watch. And this week we will be using popcorn and power chairs. If you are unfamiliar with our friend Andrew's podcast called Disability After Dark, he has a segment called Popcorn and Power Chairs. So that is what we are using as our rating item. So let's start with our guest, Andrew. How many popcorn and power chairs for Crip Camp, a disability revolution?
I gotta give it a 9.
A 9. Okay.
Excellent.
You wanna go into that at all? Why you scored at that, or just 9? Bye.
Just straight up 9.
Okay.
9.
Perfect. Katie, how about you? How many popcorn and power chairs?
Solid 10.
Solid 10. This is the best documentary, or at least on par with that you've ever seen.
Absolutely.
Very good. James.
I gave it 9.
9 power chairs and 9 full bags of popcorn.
9 full bags of popcorn.
I know you love your popcorn too.
I do. I got somebody at home waiting for me right now.
Very good. I gave this 8 popcorn and power chairs, which, it's not unusual for me to be the low number, but I thought I was giving it a pretty good one. But not really, besides the just kind of wanting a little bit more. I mean, that's the only reason that it came, down from anything less than that, but still very good. So after averaging everyone's scores, Matt, I'm sorry, man, without the microphone, you don't get a vote. So after averaging everyone's scores, the official documentary rating for Crip Camp, a Disability Revolution is 9 popcorn and power chairs. I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us on this incredible episode, and a very, very special thank you to Andrew Gurza of Disability After Dark for joining us and hanging out, dropping some knowledge on us, of course. Andrew, plug all your stuff, buddy.
Yes.
All right, man. You can follow my work at andrewgurza.com. You can follow my weekly podcast, Disability After Dark, wherever you listen to stuff. Please rate it 5 stars, because it helps the show.
It does.
You can follow my Twitter and Instagram, Andrew Gurza 6.
What's Twitter?
X. Sorry, X.
Whatever.
Follow me on X, or please. We all know it's Twitter.
What's Bumpin'?
Oh yeah, Bumpin'. Bumpin' is my sex toy company formed by disabled folks. We have created the first sex toy formed by disabled folks called Bumpin' Joystick. If you go to my website, there's a link to Bumpin' there. And you can see our new toy, the Joystick, which is available for pre-order now.
That's awesome.
I will have a link to all your stuff on our show notes. So if our listeners want to look there, they will have a direct link to your stuff if you are okay with that.
Of course.
Thanks again, man. This has been a real pleasure. I hope maybe we can cover your documentary and have you back again if you're interested.
I had a lot of fun. It was so nice to just hang out.
Good.
I'd love to invite any of you on Disability After Dark if you want to do a.
Don't say it unless you mean it, man, because I'd love to do that. I would love to do that.
Power chairs. Let me know. We'll do one. We'll watch another movie.
Let's do it.
All right, cool.
As always, thanks to my crew here, Matt over there in the silent chair. Say something loud.
Thank you.
Say your tagline.
Be a kind human.
Be a good human. All right, Katie, you're the best. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
King James.
Hey.
You guys are the best. I appreciate you all every single day. Let's talk about next week's episode. For next week, let's hear a quote. I'm going to give a quote from Lakota war leader Crazy Horse. The Red Nation shall rise again, and it shall be a blessing for a sick world, a world filled with broken promises, selfishness, and separations, a world longing for light again. To celebrate Thanksgiving, we will be following the attempts by Native Americans to reclaim the foodways of their ancestors in a 2020 documentary titled Gather. Have anyone seen Gather or heard of Gather?
No.
No? Andrew?
Sounds interesting.
No, I haven't. It sounds like something I should probably watch, though.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool. So if everyone go out and check out the documentary Gather, it can be found on Netflix. Check it out before our next episode. As I said at the beginning, go rate and review our podcast. Give us some subscriptions and some love and
some stars.
If you've been listening this long and you know this is something new we started to do on our show, go to our social media or our YouTube. And Andrew, I'm going to put you on the spot. I need you to pick the sexiest word you can think of for our guests to comment.
I don't think I can.
Yes,
I don't
you
think
can. This is explicit.
Wow. Cock.
Ooh, love it.
All right, so go to our YouTube or to one of our social medias and put cock in, and you will
just the word though.
No
photos, nothing extra.
If I get an unsolicited dick pic, I am going to
We take
report.
photographic liberties to decorate it as we see fit. Rainbows and Vladimir Putin people.
I don't get the reference, but I gotcha.
He's gonna write it.
Oh. Okay. Anyway, you'll get a shout out on one of our future episodes if you put cock in our
comments. This is gonna be good.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Greatest idea.
All right, so join us as we observe the fight to revitalize the native foodways, one documentary at a time. On behalf of Andrew Gurza, Lady Katy, Matty Boom Blatty, King James himself, DJ in that post-production booth, and Matt in that post-production booth now, in the entire documentary family, I'm your host, Jeff Kolaski, and I want to thank you all for listening. I hope you keep your minds open and be kind to each other. Everybody say bye.
Bye.
Bye.